Hi, everyone. This is Michele Graglia.
This is Marianne Hogan.
Hi, I'm Adrian McDonald.
I'm Katie Asmith.
Hi, this is Anthony Gasals.
Hi, my name is Meg Morgan.
Hey, it's Jordan Trove.
This is John Ray.
This is Ryan Van Duzer, and you are listening to the Gotta Run Racing Podcast.
Hey, everyone. Welcome back to another Gotta Run Podcast.
Hello, hello.
If you're searching for an ultra running podcast, you have found it.
Indeedy.
The search is over. You can stop everything. And yep, you found your home.
Subscribe, review, rate, all the good things.
Yeah, it's all there at your fingertips.
You got it. And if you're looking for a way to support a Canadian content duo and race directing team, have we got the virtual for you?
Oh, yeah. What's going on with We Run the North?
We Run the North Virtual National Park 10K in 13 of Canada's incredible national parks. You can pick which provinces that you'd like to virtually run in. We'll send you an incredible medal that actually connects to other medals if you buy more than one. And you get a license plate style bib and stickers as well.
Very good.
And magnets if you decide to choose the magnets. But we are running low on a couple provinces because this is our last year for We Run the North. We've been doing this, I think, for 4 or 5 years.
Yep.
And we are getting low on provinces, and the price is better than it's ever been. So if you've been thinking about it, sign up today because once those medals are sold out, they ain't coming back.
And there's no tariffs between provinces.
That's right. No tariffs here. No extra charge, no matter which province or territory you live in. Good one, Norm.
Okay. And what else is happening in Gotta Run Racing?
Well, Rainbow Trail Run is really just around the corner now that we've hit spring. It's still considered a spring race because it's June the 14th. We did move the date for all of you who are used to it in July. You're welcome. It shouldn't be as hot.
Yep.
We've got 1, 2, 4, or 5 loops available. And actually the 5 loops are I think, leading in numbers, which is really cool to see.
Good.
So that's in Alliston, Ontario. There's also a virtual option in case you can't make it out to Ontario this June.
Yep.
And the swag is super cool.
And who's on the podcast today?
Today we have Evan Birch. He is an ultra runner from Calgary, Alberta, a coach, mental health advocate, and motivational speaker, as well as a co-host of a podcast called The Enduring Minds. He's completed some of Canada's longest ultras, including BC Backyard, the Divide 200, but he's most known for the talks that he gives on mental health and what he's been through battling PTSD, depression, and anxiety as a result of his years of service as an emergency services professional. If you'd like to learn more about that aspect of his life, visit his website, ultrabirch.com, B-I-R-C-H, just like the tree, where you can find plenty of links to podcasts he's been on discussing mental health. But today, we're featuring Evan's journey training with his dog Nova for the Orcas Island 100-miler. Man and dog have been running side by side for centuries. For example, the Iditarod race, which is an incredible event in Alaska.
Just finished, actually.
It did. And here in our own county where we have the Canadian Canicross series, which we'll share a link to in our show notes.
I think this is the first episode where we are chatting with a runner and their dog in an ultra 100-miler.
For sure it is.
I remember running with Presley, and the longest distance we did was 30K.
Wow.
And it was during winter. We got caught in a blizzard. And when we were done, he was done.
No doubt.
When we came back in the house, he just collapsed right in the front door.
Like, what are you doing to me?
So to think about training your dog and then going to enter a 100-miler race with your dog.
I can't wait to hear about it.
Yeah, that's going to be an episode for all dog lovers out there.
All right, let's get to it.
And here's Evan Birch coming up.
Welcome to the podcast, Evan. And Nova, if she's in the room.
I'll message my wife and see if she can bring her in at some point. You guys can say hi to her.
Yeah, at least we can get a picture of her with you.
For sure. Absolutely.
That would be cool.
It'd be nice to hear her bark, so that's her saying hello.
There you go.
Yeah, you know, she's only much of a barker if somebody passes through the front window, so.
Okay. How did she get her name?
You know, it was Oh man, that's a good question. Like, well, how did I decide on Nova?
I think I have an idea.
Yeah, it felt like a good running dog name. That's the best way I can describe it. There was never anything other, there was no other thought in my mind other than running dog. That's the only thing that was in my mind.
Right.
Well, you do know Nova from Planet of the Apes, right?
No, I don't actually.
Oh my God. If you Google Nova, Planet of the Apes,
Okay.
and that's your
Okay.
character.
Good to know.
You're aging yourself, Norm.
I appreciate it. I'm not a bit, I will say I'm just not a big like sci-fi fantasy type
Okay.
person. So that's probably why I don't know it.
Well, for the sake of our listeners, let's go to the beginning and tell us why or when or how you started running.
Yeah, so I started running, and I'm going to start dating myself here, almost probably over 2 decades ago. I mean, before that was soccer. I played soccer ever since I was a kid, from the time I was 5 all the way through. And then I kind of took up trail running just as like a fun thing to do. I never really was a track athlete in high school. I did a few events here and there, but nothing that I was like going to university or college or anything for. So I was never a university or college runner. And I started doing 5 Peaks trail races. That's how I got into trail running. And then, yeah, it was just a recreational thing. I enjoyed it. It was, I was the one on the soccer field that would stay on the field for the entire game, and everybody else would sub out and I would stay on. So there's something to it for me. From the origin story, that's how it kind of started.
Wow.
So you were a sprinter first.
Yeah, I would say soccer was the endurance aspect of it was the big piece of it.
Wow.
Right. What made you decide to get into ultras?
Yeah, so ultras was a weird one. So I played soccer, as I said, for pretty much until age 30, and then very competitive, about as competitive as you could get in Calgary at the time. It's a little bit bigger now, but kind of major league soccer was the terminology back then. And I wanted to do a sport for myself, so I decided to jump into off-road triathlons. And I signed up for 6 of them in 1 year, having never competitively swam and didn't really like swimming. And I just went, you know what, let's try something different for me that's not a team sport. I swam with a coach for 6 months. I did kind of 3 half distance and 2 full distance triathlons during that time. My legs sunk. I hated the swimming. I was always back of the pack, absolutely hated it. But the run on the trails is where I found I was always top 3, top 4, top 5 for the time frame. And I was like, okay, there's got to be something here. So I started signing up for a slightly longer trail distance. So I signed up for part of the Golden Ultra, which took place in Golden, BC back in 2017. And that was the 30K second day part of the race on the half pint course. And I absolutely loved it. I bonked the last 2 kilometers, just absolutely destroyed myself. Still remember that shameful walk in. But it was at that point that I knew there's something to this. I want to go further. And from there, it progressively went up to a 60K, which is Iron Legs Mountain Races, which is a local race here in Alberta. It's one of the longer standing kind of community style ultra races out in Bright Creek. And then I went from 60 to 119 to 100 miles to 200 miles to 300 miles. And it's just snowballed.
That can happen.
So what was your first ultra?
Yeah, my first ultra was Iron Legs Mountain Races, and it was a 60K here in Alberta. It's probably one of the highest elevation 60Ks that you'll find anywhere. It's got almost 3,000 meters of elevation over 60K.
Wow.
And it was hot. It definitely took a lot out of me. I finished 10th in that one back in 2019. And from then I just knew I was like, I want to go further. But when you talk about the why, subconsciously, I didn't know why I was wanting to go further. But that kind of stems back to my career in emergency services and the subsequent mental health diagnoses and things like that I didn't know about at the time. And why, if I were to put it on a linear line of mental health versus ultra running, and everything just kind of went in line with one another as things were getting worse. I was wanting to run further, and I didn't know at the time that that's what it was.
Right. Right. Now, our friends at Sinister Sports are coming to Ontario this year, which is pretty exciting. I don't know if you know, but they're bringing a 200 miler and then a 3-day stage race in Collingwood, which is kind of just up the road from us. It's very exciting. But last year you took on their Divide race 200. Tell us a little bit about that. We've spoken to a few people that have done that race. It sounds like a beast, but what was your experience?
Yeah, so that was year 2. So I was in the inaugural year as well. I did it. So I decided to go back for a second time, which a lot of people who did it the first time may not tell you they want to go back a second time, just purely because of how tough of a course it actually is. It is the first third of the course has an immense amount of elevation. You are climbing and climbing and climbing the entire time, sometimes in heat. You're scrambling on certain sections. You're running down scree on other sections. It is the most rugged 200 miler that you will find anywhere. I argue that it's probably the most rugged 200 miler. I haven't done any of the US races yet. I'm in Tahoe 200 this year, which we can talk more about as we go through here. But yeah, I just, from everybody that had done other 200s that were running with me, everybody said that this one is just hands down the most rugged 200 miler around.
Going into year 2, how much did you change your strategy and training and everything else? You must have, that's a great, having that asset of doing it the year before, knowing what you're in for. You must have really attacked it differently.
But what happened in year 1?
Yeah, year 1. So yeah, year 1, I definitely finished. There's no doubt in my mind that I'm luckily I've had really good luck, I will say, because I don't think we ever can really guarantee a finish in any of these races. So for me, the 200 mile distance is this weird distance that I think everybody is capable of it if they believe that they're capable of it. And I think that distance is just going through potentially 4 nights or 3 nights, depending on how fast you're going. Like just that rollover for me of moving into the furthest I had ever gone was probably the hardest part of the 200 milers, is going past that distance. This is unknown territory now, and I have no idea how it's going to play out. But the first year, I finished in 83 hours. The course between year 1 and year 2 actually changed slightly just with permitting. So year 1, there was a very long fire road section that was about 45 kilometers, give or take. And they removed that portion to give us more elevation, which was great. In year 2, it was probably another extra 1,000 meters of elevation based on when I looked at my 2 tracks and everything from the 2 previous years. But it was, the difference between the 2 was the weather. This year, or I should say last year in 2024 was, we had, I recall about it took me 18 hours over one of the sections that should have taken us 8 or 9. It was the shoe stealing mud that literally just wants to suck it off your foot, quad tracks and just ankle deep mud. And you're literally just, you got your poles out and you're skiing through the mud. It was, and then I got wet. I decided to put on a poncho over top of my already wet clothes, which created a sauna, which soaked me right to the bone. It was getting cooler through the night. I had to take everything off at the aid station. I was literally like it was the first time I'd ever pulled out an emergency blanket in any run or any race that I had done. Luckily, they had a fire at the aid station, and it was the memories that come swelling back for me about the weather and the conditions. Hands down, the worst conditions I've ever ran in.
Wow.
Also, everyone's spread out. So how many hours go by before you see another runner?
Yeah, luckily during that time I had a pacer with me. I had a friend who, one of those people that agreed not reluctantly, but agreed to pace 100 kilometers in a row for me.
Wow.
Which is pretty amazing to have friends that are willing to do that. But when you talk about being spread out, other than my pacer, we maybe saw some people passing you. Nighttime is a little bit quieter because people choose to sleep. So you don't really know when you're passing people either, because they could be sleeping at the aid station and you might keep going. So you never really know who you're passing or when. And the difference between year 1 and year 2 for me is I was really focused on year 1 of what are other people doing. And year 2, I was so focused on me and myself. And I didn't even look. I told my crew, I'm like, I don't want you to tell me what place I'm in. I don't want you to tell me any of that. I just want to go. If I'm having the best day out there compared to everybody else, then that's great. but I don't want to know what everybody else is doing.
Right. How much sleep did you get?
Not very much. So I had intended to, that was the same thing, difference between year 1, year 2 is the sleep strategy. So year 1, I had very specific sleep times that I was going to kind of nail down. And year 2, I think year 1, I slept maybe 5 hours.
Okay.
Over the 83. And then year 2, I decided I was going to do something completely different that nobody had ever really done. I was going to run 100 miles. And then I had originally planned I was going to sleep for 6 hours. And then I was going to go out and crush another 100 miles.
Okay.
Good plan.
Things changed a little bit because when I got to that 100, just shy of the 100-mile mark, let me sleep for 3 hours. Let's see how I'm feeling. I woke up. I was feeling great.
Mm-hmm.
But that's when the weather started moving in. And I had already woken up and I was, okay, let's just go. But that's when the 9 hours turned into 18 hours, which pushed my time, which completely messed me up for sleep. I took a 10-minute nap before the last 25-kilometer section because I was so exhausted. But then I also had probably the best 25 kilometers I had ever ran in any race ever before. On that last section, I think I passed 13 people.
Wow.
I did 25K in 3.5 hours with, I think it was like 800 meters of elevation.
Jeez.
And I don't know what came over me. I still to this day, if I can take that into any other race going forward, it just showed me that I had so much more left in the tank to use that I just, that there's always so much more to give in these races that I think we hold ourselves back.
When you're just running by yourself without your pacer and you're just you and your thoughts, what do you think about?
Nothing.
That's great.
That's the word, nothing. I am so focused on being present with where I am at that moment. If you were to ask me 4 years ago when I first got into this, I would be thinking about where is that next person and how am I going to pass them? Again, focused on what everybody else is doing rather than what I'm doing. And now I've really come from this place of I'm in this for me right now. And the best thing I can do possible for me is to be present and be thinking about that next footstep. If I kick a route, you'll hear me maybe out loud, depending on how far I am. I'll actually tell myself, pick up your feet, stop being lazy. These things that you kind of take for granted when you're, again, in other people with other people. Would I say that out loud if I was with somebody else? Probably not. And I don't know why. Again, maybe the ego piece of it. But it's really about that presence and being where you are. Because I think that's the beauty about these races is there's very few places that we can put ourselves into in this day and age where I don't have to worry about emails, phones, media, all these thousands of pieces of information coming at me all the time. All I have to worry about is where I am right now.
Yeah.
And that's the beauty of these races. It allows us to go to these places of solitude where we get the opportunity to just be with ourselves. And that's really hard for some people to just be with themselves. You talk about, what do I think about? I'm sure there's some people that can't be with their thoughts for that long. And that's where they might turn to music or podcasts or something. And I very rarely run with music for that reason. I think it's an opportunity to, give yourself that space, and maybe a creative idea might pop up and I might remember something, but am I actively thinking about anything? That answer is no.
So how did you consciously make that switch from worrying about where you are and everyone else is to where you are now?
I will say therapy was a big help with that.
Okay.
Going through my mental health journey of PTSD, depression, and anxiety from 20 years in emergency services, it really showed me that I was giving up a lot of myself in my career, and I will always want to be of service to other people, but not at my own expense.
Sure.
So for me, it was about really kind of reassessing whether or not I can run from a place of self-love, worth, enjoyment, as opposed to chasing the outcomes. Because now the outcome is going to be what it's going to be. All I can do is focus on the process. And if you can't fall in love with the process, you're always going to be chasing something.
Right.
Always going to be wanting, the race is going to finish and you're going to go, what's next?
Mm-hmm.
And the race is going to finish, you're going to go, what's next? And if you can't find that love and that process of doing all of the training and everything, because the race is 1%. Not even 1%.
Yeah.
It's all of the other things that, because ultra running is a lifestyle, especially, I would argue you could probably go up to 50K and maybe not change a lot of things. But as soon as you go beyond that distance, it becomes a lifestyle. It can either consume you, or you can find a way to, I tell all my athletes that I coach, running has to fit into your life, not life fitting into your running. There has to be a level of control for yourself that it doesn't become your full identity, because that's when people get injured and things happen and they go down a dark path.
Absolutely.
I read somewhere that you dropped your pacer. Is there a story behind that?
Yes. So that's that last 25 kilometers of the Divide 200. So James loves this story. I love telling it. So he's given me permission, by the way, to tell this story.
Okay.
It's good. So yeah, that last 25 kilometers, he was with me. We both had a quick 10-minute nap, and I just said, let's go. I want to finish this. And that's when I made the decision. I asked my wife, I said, where are we right now? Because 25K left. I just wanted to know, where are we at? What do I have left in the tank? And she said, right now there's 5 people sleeping here, and there's maybe 7 or 8 people ahead of you. But like realistically, you could maybe end up somewhere in around 10th if you were able to push.
Right.
And that's the fuel that I needed. I was just like, okay, that's all. I don't need to know anything else. I don't want to know how far ahead they are or anything. Let's just go. And we had another friend that had been resting at the aid station. He wanted to come along with us, and he was another runner for the race. And we started going, and I don't know what came over me, but I just have more in my legs. I'm like, let's push this. And I started running up every single hill. They were trying to keep up with me, and it kind of goes up the backside Castle Mountain Ski Resort. So it's very rolly, and there's a lot of punchy ups and flats. So it was really pushing for like 30 seconds and then getting to run flat. And after a while, I was just like, I just took off, and I would run up every hill. I would look behind me. He was gone. And by the time I got to the finish, I had gapped them by 20 minutes.
Wow.
Because I finished, and then they came in, about 20, 25 minutes behind me is when they came in. And he came up to me. So that other period of time that we were running together, he's like, I will never go easy on you ever again. Because if you can do this at the end of a 200-mile race. So it was kind of fun to drop your pacer. And I like telling this story because, sometimes you got to drop your pacer.
There you go.
Very good.
Well, let's get to Nova. How long have you had her?
So Nova is my 7-year-old Hungarian Vizsla dog, and I have had her since would be August 2017 is when we picked her up. I picked her up. I drove down to Montana for 14 hours, brought her back in the car for 14 hours the next day, and hand-fed her kibble on the front seat as she slept the entire time, just one piece every 5 minutes.
Aww.
So we bonded very quickly over food, I will say.
Was she a rescue?
No, so we picked her up from the breeder. It's ASD Kennels in Montana, and they're a family they primarily bird hunt. So that's what Vizslas are primarily bred for, is their birding dogs.
Right.
And they raise all their puppies with their family, and they grow up with their kids. And the one thing that I said to them when they were asking, what are you looking for in a puppy? And I said, whichever dog goes to your kids the most, that's the dog that I want.
That's a good one.
So that was my only stipulation, was like, I want the dog that gravitates towards kids, because I had 2 young kids, one on the way and a young daughter at the time, a 2-year-old. So bringing a puppy in with a 2-year-old and a young daughter on the way, it was bold, I will say.
Now, when you picked Vizsla, were you doing that because of the running aspect? Was that a huge factor for you?
Absolutely. I had miniature pinchers before, miniature Doberman pinchers, and I wanted a running dog. I really, at that point, after doing those off-road triathlons, I was like, there's no doubt in my mind, I want a training partner that I don't have to call, I don't have to send a text message to, that we don't have to make plans, that I could just take with me and go.
Right.
And that's what it was about, was choosing a breed that could do that. Little did I know how far she could actually go.
Well, that's what we're going to get into next.
Let's talk about Orcas Island 100 miler. When was the idea planted that you want to run 100 miles with Nova?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think I can pinpoint the exact day. The one thing I will say is the last kind of 3 years since I decided to really run from that different place of that first year with the Divide 200 that I did, that place of love and joy. And for myself, I want to do one thing each year that's a little bit different than the mainstream racing, I will say, chasing a podium or trying to get, be the fastest person. So the first year, 3 years ago, was when I did my own 100-miler on the road. And then last year was the Speed Project, the LA to Vegas run. And then this year was Orcas Island 100 with Nova. And really that idea came from the numerous ultras that we've already ran together just in training. She's done well over 20 ultra distance efforts over the last, I'll say, 3 to 4 years right now, together just in training. So I knew she was capable of something like that. And I was like, you know what, I'd always looked at canicross races. It's not as big here in Western Canada. I know it's a little bit more popular out in Ontario, Quebec area, of people running with their dogs. And there wasn't really anything here. I was like, oh man, maybe I should just start looking at ultras. There's got to be something. There's got to be races that allow this. And there's very few.
Yeah.
I think it's due to insurance and those types of things. So for me, it was very intentional when I reached out to Rain Shadow Running, who puts on Orcas 100. I reached out to Katie Farrell, who's one of the race directors. And she, as soon as I reached out, I just said, hey, I hear dogs are allowed at your races. I said, have you ever had a dog run the full distance? And she said, we've had dogs run a couple laps here and there, but we've never had somebody right off the bat attempt this. And I said, well, let's do it. And she said, we're in. She was very, very receptive right off the bat to it, which was great. But I can't pinpoint the exact day. I just knew that it was always something I wanted to do. Did I know it was going to be a 100-miler? I didn't know until I found the race.
Right. Yeah, I was going to ask about the permission and the insurance factor, because I know in Ontario it's not possible from an insurance standpoint. So it's interesting because you'd have to find the right type of course too, right?
Yeah, because
obviously
Orcas Island is a looped course. So I guess that played a factor. You always wanted to get back to where you started.
Absolutely. And the terrain and the weather and the looped course, it just, everything just fit. If you were to think of all the puzzle pieces that I was trying to put together with making sure that we did this in the most safe, holistic way for her, because again, it's not lost on me that people might think that this is insane, making your dog run 100 miles. I completely appreciate that.
right.
I just wanted to be clear that I went into this, vet checks. I talked to friends that had a friend's dad who owns a sled dog company. I was very intentional with how I made this plan. We had dedicated rest time that she had to have. We weren't willing to sacrifice that for finishing. The outcome was never the goal. It was always sharing the adventure together. And Orcas just fit everything together. The terrain, it was, Pacific Northwest style, super mossy, a little bit muddy, soft for 90% of the course, other than a little bit of uphill to get up the first incline for the road. But it was weather 0 to 10 degrees Celsius, a little bit cooler. I don't have to worry about her overheating. And really the terrain was the biggest one because her paws. I mean, you think about how much living in the Rockies, I've seen her get a couple of torn pads here and there. So I know what terrain worked for her and what didn't. And we didn't have to put boots on her the entire time because we used what's called musher's wax. It just kind of treats their paws and kind of softens them up so they don't crack as easily. It kind of gives them this like supple leather type feeling. So we were doing that for weeks before just to maintain that level for her. But yeah, it was just the perfect conditions and the perfect race, and everything just lined up. It was, February, it was before my race season, which meant it wouldn't interfere with anything else that I was doing. Training through the winter was fun, no doubt. But,
I was going to say perfect, but not so perfect training in Calgary through the winter.
Yes. Training was fun. I'll say that.
So the gun goes off. Did you have to hold her back?
You know what? A number of times, most races, she's, with my wife crewing. And this was the first time that I'd ever been standing at the start line, her standing in the middle of the crowd, just everybody just smiling, right? Because, people see this dog, and they had obviously mentioned it at the pre-race briefing the night before, introduced me and said what I was doing. And everybody was super interested in asking questions. And they just saw her standing in the chute and just everybody was just smiling. And I think that was the best part about it, was just race starts for a lot of people can be very high anxiety. We talk about needing to go to the bathroom before the race, but seeing this dog who, again, the way I like to describe it is she had no idea how far we were going to go.
No.
That's the unique part about it. She had zero clue how far we were going to go, but she was there as soon as everybody started moving, because I run with a few people regularly in groups and things like that. She just knew what to do.
Right.
And because I had been training on harness with her for a full year, I'd run with her on harness before, but let her off leash. But she was strictly on harness from the time I made the decision in April of last year to do this race. She was not allowed off leash training. She was on harness the entire time. So she just knew what we were going to do. She just didn't know how far for how long. And we were just together and just ready for whatever was to come.
How much of a percentage do you think she helps you in climbing?
Yeah.
So I've been asked this, and the people had asked me like, "Oh, if you finish really well, are you going to be, if you hit podium, for instance, are you going to be disqualified because you had a dog with you?"
Mm.
And it was I never thought about that aspect, because I knew we weren't going to hit podium, because I was willing to use all 36 hours if we needed to.
Right.
That was always the thought in my mind. But yeah, the pulling, you would think she would be pulling you uphill, but I'll be honest, like anytime there was a steep hill and I took my poles out, because when she was little, she got poked by a pole when I was running once. You know how dogs internalize everything. So as soon as one thing happens one time, the likelihood of it happening again is very high. So as soon as those poles comes out, she knows instinctively, for some reason, she just tends to drop back a little bit on the hills.
Oh, wow.
So she's not yanking me up the hills most of the time. She'll go up the hills. But if you ever were to look at us and how we're going, like Canicross racing, you'll see it where that leash is always strained the entire time.
Yes.
That's not how we run. She's not much of a puller. Maybe initially on like a smaller hill, she might pull up a little bit, but it's actually more of a hindrance than it is a benefit, because you're tripping over the leash. She's trying to get around the poles. You're trying to get her to stop sniffing something in the trees. It is actually a detriment as opposed to a benefit in these longer ones. It's funny. You would think she would be helping, but she's not.
No, that's interesting.
So I assume this is the first time you're seeing the course. So tell us about the very first loop.
Have you guys checked out our merch via our website, GottaRun Racing? We have some really cool swag, including the mugs that, if you've watched our YouTube video, that we drink with. Cool red mug with a corked bottom. It keeps liquids nice and cold or warm. What else do we have on there, Norm?
Well, we have our shirts that I'm wearing.
That's right. You can either choose from GottaRunPodcast or GottaRun Racing. You can also find our 20-liter dry bags, which are a steal at $25. Perfect for using it drop-off bag at an aid station. We've got flasks. We also have cooling multifunctional neckwear, which is a fancy word for a cooling buff. Has the GottaRun Racing and podcast logos on it. Not to mention, we have the affiliate links for the 3 companies, for the 3 brands that we are affiliated with, that being Air Relax, Compression Therapy, Caffeine Bullet, and Kinesis Sunscreen. So by following those links, you can access exclusive discounts. So do check that out, GottaRunRacing.com.
Yeah. So the first loop is, so you start out on the road and you go up to kind of a lookout point, but it's basically a winding paved road up about 5 kilometers. Pretty easy grade. I was able to run the first loop, no problem. We ran up the entire loop. A little bit tiring, but I just wanted to kind of see how we could gauge things. And then you kind of drop into this super cool mossy downhill section, end up at the next aid station fairly quickly. It's not a long section. And then you end up going around a large lake. It's pretty flat for the first 3 or 4 kilometers. You get to just tear on this double wide single track. And that's where she starts pulling. When it's flat single track, and that's why I think she would be an amazing Canicross runner, but we'll see the future. And then you kind of go in behind the lake and you go up these fairly long inclines and you kind of larger rolling hills. You kind of loop back down around the lake, and then you end up just before you start to kind of go up the major climb up power line. You end up at the next aid station. There's a little bit of a road, about 2 kilometers of road to get to that next aid station. And then once you get there, you go out and you start climbing up power line. And that's where it's like a goat track. That's the best way I can describe it. Obviously, we had rain and we had a little bit of mud and a little bit of slippery sections. But that power line section's about 3 kilometers. The cool thing about this race, and that's why I love this race and I will go back and I want to run this myself, it was probably the most balanced race between elevation and runnable terrain that I'd ever been on. If you were to look at the graph, like, some races are just, you go up forever and then you just go down forever. This was, you went up and then you got to have some fun stuff for some flats, and then you went down and then you went down to the valley and then you went up again and then you got to flatten out and you went down again. It was very balanced, which I think is like an awesome way to race, because then you don't have this mentality of it just being this dreadful thing that, oh, I have to do that climb again. I only have to do this climb, but then I get to rip downhill. So yeah, you get up to the top of power line, and then it flattens out. You get a nice, really cool section in the trees, in the forest. This place is absolutely amazing. You need to add this race to your list because it is such a picturesque place. And you see off in the distance, there's the ocean. This is nuts. And then you go down to the valley, bottom of the valley floor again, and then you have about I guess it's 2.5 miles. So it's about just over 4 kilometers up. Very long switchback that just kind of winds up in through the trees up to Mount Constitution, which is the highest point. And they have a tower at the top of Mount Constitution. You can, if you want to become part of the tower club, every loop, you have to go up to the top of the tower and punch your bib and then go back down. At the end of at the award ceremony, you get a t-shirt saying you're part of the tower club. You don't have to, but it's not bad. Nova and I went up each time to do it, but it was so windy up there every single time. You can imagine Pacific Northwest weather coming in over top of an island at the top when you're at the summit. It is just, it was not great conditions every time we went up there. And then you get to rip right downhill for 8 kilometers, just weaving single track through the forest, just this mossy sections. Such a cool ecosystem. It's nuts what you actually get to travel through. I actually get to be here and do this. And I think that's the cool thing about being present, is you get to experience it. You're not worried about what everybody else is doing. You get to be there.
Right.
And then you wind back down. You have a little 2K section of just some rolling hills, and then you end up back at Camp Moran, which is the main start finish. And that's kind of the way the course loops through.
Okay. And how many K per loop?
25 miles.
25 miles.
Yeah. So just around 40-ish K. Yeah.
Right. And how much time had elapsed after loop 1?
Loop 1 was 6 hours.
6 hours.
Yeah, exactly. It was just I think it was like a minute shy of 6 hours.
Okay. And were you planning to rest her after each loop? Is that the strategy?
Yeah, each loop. After the first loop, we had an hour break scheduled, just because she had gone that distance before with me, no problem whatsoever with no break. But we were just like, you know what? She's going to be going further. Let's be mindful and let's just let her rest for a while and put her in the car, let her sleep in her little sleeping bag and take all of her gear off and let her sleep for an hour.
So did you feel guilty getting her up after the hour?
I think she was, again, because she had no idea what we were doing and why we were there. I think she was just a little bit of confusion of, why are you putting my jacket back on? I thought we were done running for the day now. And I think that's because I've run with her so much, I know her cues so well. Her tail wasn't down. We picked her up out of her sleeping bag, put her jacket on, which she hates, clothes, jackets, any harness. I don't know what it is. As soon as she gets it on and we start moving, she's fine. But as soon as if she has it on, she'll literally just stand there like a statue. Pretty funny. But yeah, she was definitely confused, I will say. But there's no hesitation to do it. There wasn't any sort of pulling back, or as soon as I had her clipped on, tail went up and we started moving again, she was in front of me.
There you go.
Just like she always is.
Nice.
So we're starting to. And same strategy, or you were just going to see how it went? Yeah,
similar strategy. Obviously I have to think about myself, which I was not good about doing in this entire race. I was so focused on her because it was about her. This was about us doing something fun together, but really just trying to see how far could we go together. And so we walked a little bit of that first incline instead of running it this time. The weather was starting to come in a little bit more. It was misty rain, starting to get a little bit of fog, started to get dark. And that loop was, rather than just kind of going through the whole loop again, I will just say it was the weather that came in overnight. It was misty fog. Think about driving down the road in fog with your brights on,
Right.
and how hard that is to do. That was what it was. That's what it felt like the entire night for us.
Oh,
Through the entire section with your headlamp, obviously that beam coming down in front of you with the fog, we could see maybe 6 feet in front of us.
oh,
And then I started to run. And of course, because it's Rudy and other things, I started kicking things. And now I'm thinking about Nova and going, her vision is worse than mine because she's a dog. And now we're in fog. So she's trusting me to get her through this. So I was, you know what? We're just going to take it slow. We're not going to rush. We're not going to whatever. But taking it slow meant every breath I took was also fogging me up as well. So now 6 feet turned into 3 feet of visibility. It was such weird conditions to run in. I've never ran in, fog is one of those weather systems, like you can't put clothes on for it. You can't put clothes on for fog.
no.
Like, what do you do?
Yeah.
Right? If I'm cold, I put a jacket on. If I'm hot, I take a jacket off. If there's fog, you walk.
Yeah.
That's what you do. That's all you can do.
And if you wear glasses, you're really walking. It would be a disaster. It would be a disaster.
It's like, I know my wife, nighttime driving for my wife is difficult. So I totally can see how that could be a issue as well too, right? So yeah, the fog delayed us quite a bit through the night. Finished the loop. We finished that loop in somewhere around 10 hours,
Okay.
give or take, which pushed us back on our time schedule because we had thought it was going to be like 7 or 8.
Sure.
But again, I wasn't willing to sacrifice her rest. So we made sure that she got that 2-hour block of rest. And I went, you know what? I might as well sleep. So I slept for that period of time, woke up, and again, she was in her sleeping bag, and we're getting her out of her sleeping bag again. And she's like, what is going on? Like, she's like, I thought I was done. And got her up again, put her jacket back on. It was kind of early morning at that time, still no sun up, and started going back out again for loop 3, knowing that we were going to be pushing time and we had to move.
Yeah.
We had to be we could have been a little bit slower than the first loop. I think we had like 6.5 hours in order to make that cutoff back at the camp.
Okay.
So we knew it was going to be tough, but we knew that the fog was going to burn off at a certain point in the morning. But yeah, we were moving really well for the first, I would say, half of the 25 miles. The fog started to lift a little bit. We started moving really well. But then again, you're looking at the time, and now it's very rare. I've never chased cutoffs in any race. I'll be honest. It's the first time that I'm experiencing this for myself, going, I now really truly understand what people feel when you say you're chasing cutoffs and you're trying to push yourself, and then your brain is telling you, I can't go any faster, but you're pushing yourself. No, I don't want to walk, but your brain is telling you to walk. Nova the entire time is still leading. She led for 95% of this race. And I'm just sitting there, how did I become the weak link? And I think that is the complete flip of this for me, is I went from being the person that I thought I was pacing her to now she was actually pacing me, and I'm holding this back now. I'm like, how did it turn so quickly? Which is so weird to say, that I was the weak link between me and a dog. But it just shows you what they're capable of.
Yeah.
And I think nobody had done this before. There's no documented race or anybody who has even attempted something like this in a sanctioned race. I know you might be familiar with the story of Finding Gobi, the dog that ran through the desert. So I met Dion and his wife Felicia at an event here in Calgary in the last probably 6 months.
Nice.
And we talked, I told him what I was doing, and he's like, oh, that's so cool. I can't wait to kind of follow along. And yeah, that's the only one I know of. And that was a stage race over a period of a number of days, right? Rather than going for 36 hours and seeing what we can do. So I became the weak link, short story. And we looked at the time. I was like, I just don't think we're going to be able to make it, given what we had left to do. We had kind of dropped down to that valley floor, and I still had 2.5 miles to go up the switchbacks to get to the top of Mount Constitution. And then it was 8.5K down. So I'm looking at the time, there's just not enough time to do this. And again, it was never about the outcome.
No.
It wasn't about getting to that finish line. It was about seeing how far we could go with the plan that we created and making sure that I'm not putting any undue pressure on her by skipping her rests and things like that, because we were in unknown territory. And we walked up that incline. We got to the top of Mount Constitution, and her little aid station cheer squad was there again. They were always so happy to see her. I was the afterthought, which I can appreciate. To see a dog running. Of course, you're going to go with the dog, which I didn't mind at all. I love that she had that. It was kind of, you could just see her tail wagging, happy to see everybody. And which tells me, those are those cues that just tells me that like I didn't push her too far.
Right.
And just seeing her just happy, tail wagging. She wasn't trying to go sit or lay down or like curl up or get away from me. She was just happy to be there, which was so cool to see the interactions between her and the staff and the aid station people. But yeah, we made the decision at the top. I messaged my wife and just said, we're not going to make cutoffs. We had 20 minutes to get down, and it was going to easily take anywhere from 50 minutes to an hour to get down. So we just missed the cutoff. And
Right.
we just decided that we were just going to walk down instead. There's no reason to run down at this point. In Mount Constitution, they weren't allowing any crew or anybody up there because of the road conditions.
Mhm.
So we just decided we were just going to walk it in. And again, you can't lose if you don't quit. So
That's right.
we just walked it in, and we ran the last couple kilometers just to say that we were
Finish
able to
strong.
finish. And
Yeah.
yeah, and we ran it in at the end, and yeah, it was like bittersweet knowing that, could we have gone further? I think she was capable of the distance
Mhm.
if we had been able to meet that last cutoff, because that last cutoff was 11 a.m. and you had until 8 p.m. to finish the race. So had we been able to make that last cutoff, I think we probably would have been able to make that distance, but we're never going to know, and that's okay.
What was the total mileage?
Total mileage. So I had a watch for me, and then I had a watch for her, but hers was bouncing on her chest the whole time.
Mm.
So total mileage was 75 miles, which is 135 kilometers, give or take, somewhere in there.
Yeah.
I know her watch said something. Her watch was just shy of 140 kilometers on her watch,
Okay.
but she was on harness the whole time. So I think it was just the bouncing
Yeah.
that was setting it off a little bit. But yeah, so there was 75 miles in just over 28 hours, which again,
Incredible.
I am absolutely blown away at what she was capable of, and knowing that we probably could have gone further. But the problem with Vizslas is, as soon as you show them how far they're able to go, you're in trouble, because now you've given them the evidence that I can go that far, right? So I feel like I've created a monster in her, but I'm not sure how. Yeah, we'll see. That distance likely won't ever happen again. She's 7. She turns 8 this year. So this was like a one and done distance opportunity that I'll have with me forever.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But have you ever thought about on the fourth loop that if you just let her go, now that she knows the course, she could have done the rest herself. She doesn't need you. She goes, let me just get this done.
Come on, Evan.
Yeah. Had I let her off on that last incline, I think you're right. I definitely, I was the weak link. Like, let's be clear. Like that was the truth, and we'll just stick with that as the truth.
Aw, well, what a great running partner you have. That's just incredible. And there's a documentary coming out on this whole event soon?
Yeah, so we were able to secure a plan to have a couple of friends of mine, now friends, became friends over the last year. Lucas Cullen and Tommy DeWitt were the team that was out there filming it for me. And really, when I say documentary, this isn't going to be your typical running documentary. This is about her. This is about Nova's journey. This isn't about my journey. I am think of like that meme that goes around of Homer Simpson hiding in the bushes. That's me. Like I want this to be something that's, yes, I was with her, and yes, we had shared this crazy adventure together, but this is about the story of her and just having this cool adventure that we got to share together, and really just kind of just telling our story, that my wife, Cassie, crewing us, and, she's been at all my races and crewing us again for this. And now, like, she didn't have her little buddy with her, and I took the buddy with me this time. So it's going to be I can't wait to see it. We have so much amazing footage. It's going to be hard to axe some stuff. It's going to be really tough. But Yeah, so it will be, we finally confirmed a date. So May 15th is when it'll be out. We'll do a little YouTube watch party. So I'll send all the links and everything out the masses as soon as we get everything confirmed and uploaded. And I got an opportunity to sit down and figure all that piece out, but it'll likely be in the evening on May 15th.
Nice.
Cool.
Well, I can't wait to watch it.
Absolutely.
I read Finding Gobi and just fell in love with that whole story. It's pretty incredible. And that's a very small dog. If you think about
Yes.
The distance he
the
did.
distance and the heat and the conditions, amazing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Dion and his wife had the dog because it was a library tour. So
Okay.
I had Gobi with them. So I got to meet Gobi as well too, which was kind of fun.
Yeah, I bet. Wow.
So moving on, I see you signed up for the Tahoe 200, which you did mention. Are you ready for this other beast?
Yeah, it's a completely different, hey? Like just changing it up a little bit. Yeah, so I was supposed to run it last year with everything. I got injured at Speed Project, ran a backyard ultra and just couldn't recover fast enough. So I volunteered last year, so I got to scope out the course last year, which is incredible. I swept the course on night 3 and night 4, which again, if you want to see people at their worst, sweep a 200 miler on night 3 and night 4. You get a window into people's soul at that point. But yeah, I'm doing things in my training that I have never done because I watched a video of David Roche training for Big Alta, and he said he was doing things that he had never done because he wanted to go to places he's never been. And I think that's where I'm at right now. This will be my first big US 200, and I got to scout the course out. I've ran this distance multiple times now, so I have this body of evidence behind me of what I'm capable of. And again, if I can take that last 25 kilometers of the Divide 200 last year and somehow recreate that into Tahoe, I'm very confident that I have the ability to be very competitive there. So
What month is Tahoe?
it's June 13th to the 18th.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we'll be watching.
Yeah, it's going to be a fun one. I just praying to the weather gods that they don't end up with a whole bunch of snow like they did the previous year where they had to delay it by a month because it didn't melt fast enough.
Yes.
So I'm hoping there's no delays. I left my July completely open for that reason because if there's delays, I still want to do it. So I'm happy to push if it needs to push again, but I'm ready
Well,
for
let's talk a little bit about your other gigs, which are, as you mentioned, run coach, and you're also a motivational speaker. So where can people get a hold of you and maybe talk a little bit about the type of runners that you like to coach or anything like that?
Yeah, so run coaching for me. So the last couple of years, I had only just been coaching friends. I wanted to get a little bit of experience of just the coaching aspect because I feel like, yes, I can do these races myself, but coaching is a completely different animal. In my years of emergency services, I've trained and coached a lot of people over the years, so I knew I had the ability to guide people in that way. But this year is when I've really started to take on athletes, and I'm about the whole, like the human athlete aspect. And when I talk about running having to fit into your life, I don't think I'll ever be the coach that's going to work with elites. In that way, I'm not interested really in that. I think there's enough coaches and enough people in that arena already. But I'm really looking at the people who, I like to use the term ultra curious, the ones that are moving from that kind of marathon, like, ooh, what is it going to take to run 50K? Can I run 100 kilometers? Could I do 100 miles? Those people that are really challenging themselves and really running from that place of joy and that self-love. And like, it's great that you want to, hit a podium and you want to finish and all these things, but I want an athlete that wants to fall in love with the process, and I want them to enjoy it along the way because running should be fun. You shouldn't hate every time you go out to run. If you're hating it every time, then it's probably not the thing for you. I think you can dislike it at times, but I don't think you want to be hating it. So that's really the athlete that I'm looking to coach, is somebody who's wanting to push the distance, maybe up to as far as they want to go, but really somebody who just wants to just love the process and wants that guidance and that accountability. And my goal is to, give them the tools to eventually not need a coach. I don't want them to have to need me. I want to give them the tools to be empowered and able to do this for themselves in the long term. And if they want to stay with me, great. But I want them to feel empowered in their training on their own.
I love that.
Very good.
I love what you said about fitting it into your life and having the balance. I think balance is something that is missing for a lot of runners. You said they take that a little too seriously and it becomes their life and they don't have other things in their life. So I like what you said there. That's really important. Yeah.
Yeah, and then with the speaking, and then the other one you may not know. So I just recently I've submitted my final case studies for it. I am a breathwork coach as well. So primarily focusing on nasal breathing. So I've worked with all my athletes towards nasal breathing running, which I found massive benefits for myself. I know you've had Ihor Various on your podcast as well too. So Ihor and I, oxygen advantage breathwork is what I've trained in. That's what he's used for the last number of years as well too. And him and I have connected on that quite a few times. So that's what I want to bring to the running community within my coaching, is that idea of nasal breathing for performance. And I feel like it's the last untapped thing in biohacking your body. People think that breathing just happens. There's so many benefits to it. I could talk to a completely other podcast on it. And then, the motivational speaking, I think for me, with my background in emergency services and really turning running into, rather than running away, running towards now, running forward, it's really about just empowering people and showing people that they're so much more capable than they are, and all these thoughts and feelings. And running isn't therapy in itself. I think running can help with the symptoms, but it can never help with the why associated with what you might be going through.
Right.
So really just like creating a space so people don't feel alone and that they have to do this all by themselves. Yeah. So that's the motivational speaking side of things.
Well, we'll definitely put links to your website so that people can check you out if they're interested.
Absolutely.
So
Appreciate that.
should we meet Nova before or after rapid fire, if it's possible?
Is Nova around?
Yeah. Yeah. I'll put my headphones down and I'll go get her and I'll bring her right back.
Sounds good. Hey, Nova.
Nova.
Hi, Nova.
Currently hiding under the desk.
Oh. Hey, Nova. There she is.
The wonder dog.
Aw, there she is. Kisses for Daddy.
Microphone for you. She has her gray lady beard going on.
Yeah.
Yes.
So she's definitely 7, but does not act 7 years old. I can tell you that.
What does she weigh, Evan?
She is 37 pounds.
Oh, wow. She's tinier than I expected.
Yeah, she is the runt of Vizslas. I didn't mention that at the beginning, but yeah, she was the smallest out of all the puppies.
Wow.
Let me sleep.
Aw.
So she was the smallest of all the puppies when we picked her. So
She's adorable.
yeah, she is, when I say lean, like, and you know, when people talk about people looking like their dogs.
Yes.
Yeah. Like, I don't, you just need to do like a side by side. Like, okay, that's Evan's dog.
That's awesome. Thank you for that. Well, we're going to do a little bit of rapid fire and then we'll let you go and get on with your day.
Sounds good.
All right. So, favorite junk food?
Oreos.
Oreos.
Oh, that's specific.
Okay. All right.
Not cookies, but Oreos.
No. Very specifically. I will say close second is Mint Girl Guide cookies.
Oh,
we
boy.
just spoke about those this morning because we were watching the Great British Bake Off. I just got Norman to that show and they were making those and we were talking about how much do you think Girl Guide cookies are nowadays? And they're $6 a box.
That's crazy.
Uh-huh.
What do you get?
Yeah,
like
we
10
had a family. We had a family come around the other day and we asked them, we're like, do you have any mint? Normally those aren't around until later in the year. She's like, but I kept some from last year. We'll bring you one. So we're currently slamming through those.
Nice. Do you have any tattoos?
I do have a tattoo.
Oh.
And it has a fun story if you would
Sure.
like to quickly hear the story of it. So I don't know, it's kind of a little bit hard to see.
Okay.
But,
it's hard to tell.
Okay.
So this is the top of Lady McDonald.
Okay.
And then this is basically weather moving over top of the mountains with the trail. You can kind of see the trail going up.
Oh, yeah.
And then on the other side is the chemical formula for runner's high.
Oh, that's so
Oh,
cool.
very nice.
That's very unique.
Yeah. So the quick story behind the mountain one is when I did the Canmore Quad, which is all 4 peaks around Canmore and Bay.
Mhm.
The first attempt that I had with it, I got trapped on the top of Lady McDonald in the middle of a sideways 70-kilometer-hour snow pelt storm in the beginning of July.
Whoa.
And I was wearing shorts and my really thin top, and I had to get to that summit is a knife edge ridge. And it's the first time I had ever gone on it. And now I'm trying to go back in whiteout conditions because I'm like, I don't know how long this is going to last. It's not safe up here.
Yeah.
And then I ended up going down the other side, and then it screed down, and I fell 2 times. I tore my $500 jacket. I tore my $200 shorts. And then by the time I got down off that screed, the sun came up.
Of course.
So it's just my reminder of, that I have been through some hard things. And that was really the representation of what it was for me, not just that moment in that mountain, but all of everything that I've gone through with my mental health and all those other pieces. So it's really that representation for me of what I went through all that,
Right.
and that I'm on the other side of it.
I like tattoos that have meaning. I think it's important to have some meaning behind it.
Yeah, because it's there forever.
Exactly. And forever is a long time.
Yeah, forearm's a bold choice, I've been told.
Yeah, there you go. If you could travel back in time, what period would you go to?
I would like to go to 1970s surf culture.
Oh, wow, that's very specific.
No, I do like that.
That's a good one.
Like I just want to go and just be a surf bum where I don't have any responsibilities. I live in a shack with my friends, and we literally surf twice a day and eat rice and beans, and that's it.
And where would you be surfing every day?
I mean, I would pick Costa Rica just because it's the most consistent that I've been. But yeah, that's the other closet thing that I haven't really mentioned is I actually have surfed quite a bit over my lifetime. So I've done 50 lessons, and
Oh, wow.
yeah, it's one of my hidden secrets that I absolutely love surfing.
Nice.
And where do you live?
in Calgary. That's right. There's river surfing here though, but I have a friend that does it, but I haven't gotten out there.
Nice.
Cool. Would you rather be a professional artist, painter, or musician?
Or artist, painter, musician.
Oh, I said that
How
wrong.
about a writer?
Writer, painter, or musician.
A writer, painter, or musician.
Writer, painter, or musician. I would say for me, I think writing, I've come to love it quite a bit, and just even writing posts and things about my journey and my story. And I think it's such a cool medium because it can just be for you or it could be for others.
Right.
But yeah, I think writing would be my choice.
Now, we always have to ask our Canadian guests, butter tarts with or without raisins?
What kind of raisins?
Oh, they're... Okay, this
So
is
that-
so
so no
interesting.
raisins.
This is so interesting.
No raisins.
Do you have a raisin issue? Because he does.
No, I don't discriminate on butter tarts. If the word butter and tart are in the same sentence and there's a plate of them, I will eat them. There's no doubt. Yeah, I can do either or, but if I had to have a preference, I would say it would have to be with raisins. But it would have to be those those golden raisins that they
The
have?
soft ones. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Not the really tough, chewy ones. The ones that are just you wouldn't really notice it. But I mean, I also have I can't drink bubble tea because the tapioca,
Well-
I just can't do it.
yeah.
But butter tarts, I don't know why.
Yes. Well, typically they're soft, and that's why he doesn't like them.
Right. I
Because
prefer the other, which is a raisin brand or the ones out of the box.
the little sun
The
made
hard
Yeah, that's
sugar ones. Yes.
Yeah.
I wonder if our international listeners just tune out as soon as because they have no idea what butter tarts are.
Hey, you know what we should do? We should just post a recipe in the show notes and then they can go and make it
There
themselves.
you go.
Exactly.
I have my grandmother's recipe. I'll do that.
Or international listeners, you have to come to Canada.
That's right.
That's the only way you're going to get
Yeah.
one.
Yeah. The only thing that they need to know is I would say a butter tart is what, 90% corn syrup?
Yeah, unfortunately.
It's great ultra fuel. There's no doubt
You
about
got
it.
that right.
Pure sugar.
You got that right.
So,
All right, last one, Norm.
Pick a superpower that you'd like to have.
superpower. The Flash.
Hmm.
Oh,
I just wanted to be able to, because then I could just go hit every single trail that I've ever wanted to hit, and I wouldn't have to worry about time or anything, and I could just go anywhere that I wanted to go.
that'd be nice.
That would be cool.
Yeah.
Well, Evan.
I guess I'd have to fly to get there, though, right? Yeah,
Well, you can run very, very fast.
that's true. Over the water. That's right. That's true.
Forget planes.
Yeah.
Well, Evan, this has been awesome. Thanks so much for joining us. We really enjoyed learning more about the whole Orcas Island experience, especially.
Yeah, I appreciate that you guys wanted to have me on, and yeah, I'm very, very excited about sharing this story in a bigger way with the documentary because I think it's going to transcend running. Like running was the thing that we did,
Right.
but it's it's about life and that friendship and that bond that you have with your dog more than anything. Running just happens to be the thing that we do together.
Right. Love
and
it.
that's what our intro was to this podcast, is about all dog lovers out there. This is the one for you.
Well, good luck at Tahoe as well. We'll be watching out for you.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
All right. Well, we'll let you go. Thanks again. It was great to meet you.
Yeah, you as well. Appreciate the time.
I'm sure we'll cross paths again.
Absolutely. Do you want to say bye to Nova?
Yeah.
No. Oh, yeah, she's still here.
You know, man.
Come on, Papa.
She's not going to speak, is she?
No.
Bye, sweetie. Oh, what a lovely dog.
Yeah.
There we go. There's the profile pic.
Oh, yeah. Look at each other. There you go. Yeah, I don't know who's who.
Aw, she's adorable.
She's funny.
All right. Have a great day.
Awesome. You guys too.
Cheers.
Bye.
Take care.
And that was Evan Birch from Calgary, Alberta.
Great stories.
Oh, man.
Yeah, it brought back memories of when I was running with Presley.
Yes.
It's just the emotion you get, and what a great day
Yes.
that you had with your dog.
Absolutely. Animals are amazing, aren't they?
Oh, I know.
Yeah. Love it. Love it. Love it.
And I do run with our neighbor's dog.
You do.
Yeah, because, wow.
Well,
they can
it's a
forever.
great feeling. And they're so happy and tired when they get back.
Yeah, I know. It's great.
Yeah, I love
Everything's
it.
good about it.
And hopefully the weather cooperates for Tahoe.
Yeah, for him to tackle on another 200-miler.
Incredible.
That's going to be... I don't know. I don't know what is harder, the divide. So far from what we talked to who done Tahoe and the divide is seriously tough.
Yeah, divide sounds harder. For
Sounds
sure.
much, much harder. So
Yeah.
So he's going to breeze through Tahoe, no problem.
No pressure, Evan. Jeez.
Oh, boy.
All right. Well, I think that's it for this episode.
All right. Until next time.
Cheers.
Bye.